Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon.
In the framework of the press conference for the closure of the G20 summit, we will listen to the remarks made by Mr. President of Argentina, Mr. Mauricio Macri.
I would like to start by thanking you for being here, and especially the journalists visiting from different parts of the world. And let me tell you that we have concluded another edition of the G20, which for us, as I've said over the course of my interventions, has been quite unprecedented and an enormous responsibility. Ever since, as a sign of support for the transformation process taking place in Argentina and the change that the Argentine people decided for 3 years ago already, we had to assume first a responsibility in terms of organization. An event of this scale had never been held in South America, not just in Argentina, but in our region. Normally, these events are not held in capitals, and we did decide to host it in this capital because this is a country that we need to develop on a federal scale, and the truth is that the sort of infrastructure required by the G20 was available here in Buenos Aires. And I'm truly very pleased, very happy. Security has worked perfectly well. All of the logistics and supply system, as well as the organization, everything has been running smoothly. And many people, a lot of Argentines, worked for long months, and this was the highest profile meeting. But we had almost 60 meetings all over the country, really trying to make a point of showing what we showed last night at the Colón Opera House, this marvelous country we have. So I would like to again take the opportunity to congratulate yesterday evening's artists and Hernan Lombardi and everyone in his team and all those who were involved. And one could really see all the hard work that had gone into it. And the second thing I would like to note is that the G20 is a forum created at the time of a global financial crisis, seeking to create an opportunity for joint dialogue and work in order to first prevent a worsening of the financial crisis, and we succeeded in doing that at that time. Our responsibility was to stay on that path in order to reach consensus and to continue betting on dialogue, something that we believe in and that we engage in every day in managing our reality, which is a tough reality. So we really bring dialogue down to an art. We have always been a minority in Congress as a government, and well, dialogue was something I was already used to ever since I had been the mayor of Buenos Aires, the sindaco, as the Italians like to say. And we decided to get down to this task as great facilitators. And we're really happy because we have been able to come up with a communique that ratifies many things that I'm sure we'll touch on during some of our questions. But clearly, all of this was the result of the work done throughout the year, because each of the ministerials brought out a statement, there was an agreement, there were concrete measures. And again, I need to thank all of the countries that were involved. They have all collaborated very much in order for this to succeed at a time in the world when there are a lot of tensions, and at other similar meetings, it was not possible to reach this level of coordination and common ground, which we think is very important. And this is against a backdrop in which Argentina is now connected to the world like never before in its past history. Today, we can say that we truly are in the world. The world has made room for us, has given us a place. The world is interested in us and wants to be involved here, wants to support us. And we, the Argentine people, are really happy to see the opportunities that are opening up in a difficult, hard context, because markets are in the state we know they're in, and we've had to come to grips with this market, with macroeconomic imbalances that Argentina has dragged for many years, and on top of it, with a drought that has been the worst one in the last 50 years here. This is also within the context of climate change. So we are truly very happy about all of this, and we look forward to carrying on our work. We still have a bilateral meeting with Russia, another one with China. So I think that will bring it up to 17 bilateral meetings we've had over the past 3 days. And we managed to, come to agreements which will lead to benefits for the Argentines, infrastructure, benefits for our people, training, technology, development, and always with the same focus that all of the presidents with us share, how to create more opportunities for people and for each one of us to be able to develop ourselves. After this introduction, we'll have several questions, and we're ready to kick off.
First, Jean-Louis Gui from Xinhua will ask a question.
I'm from China's Xinhua News Agency. Please allow me to ask this question in English. You have mentioned in your speech at the opening plenary session of the summit that you are confident that despite differences, G20 can build consensus for the next decade. And just now, G20 leaders agree on final statement on trade, climate, and migration. So my question is, what kind of efforts the G20 members have made to reach the consensus, and what kind of role China has played during that process? Thank you.
¿Tiene traducción? Sí.
You're getting the interpretation, right? So I can speak Spanish.
Can you use your headphones? Yes. Bueno.
Okay. The truth of the matter is that we had hours of meetings, days and months of meetings that the Sherpas held. They also did a terrific job. I'd like to congratulate them as well. And the agreements range from trade matters, an agreement in which the WTO, World Trade Organization, has a great demand, which is to modernize itself, to do away with certain restrictions and red tape, trying to have a more simple dispute settlement mechanism, because there is wide agreement that when you have a conflict, you waste a lot of time, and this really undermines the whole purpose of things, and really those who feel prejudiced suffer. So we have a principle of agreement there, and no one doubts that trade leads to development. The discussion here is that it should be fair trade, and Argentina is on the front line in believing that after so many years of isolation, future is about trade and about linkages to as many countries as possible. On climate, there has also been agreement to the effect that we need to accelerate the process. The COP starting in Poland this week will be a good opportunity to increase and enhance, boost our goals and make sure that they are met, because we are truly reaching a limit, and there was also agreement on the fact that each one of us should act pursuant to commitments by strongly supporting renewable energies, an area in which Argentina is also investing a lot in terms of energy efficiency, which is also a great opportunity. And with regard to the future of work and education, there was also wide agreement that we are facing a technological revolution that is really leading to the inevitable disappearance of old jobs that are replaced by new ones. And what we must all understand is that we are entering an era in which we will all have to train and retrain several times over the course of our lifetimes. We are all working and trying to see how to act in a manner conducive to this adaptation process that we'll have to go through in the world. We don't have all these certainties because we are going through an accelerating process. And you can't stop this because technology is reaching you more and more through the apps on your smartphones. So this has acquired a dynamic of its own. But what we do understand is that we need to introduce technology in the way we educate and we train our kids, our boys and girls, for them to adapt to jobs which perhaps don't even exist yet. And another area on which we had huge agreement is the empowerment of women. And this no longer has to do with a matter of justice as such, but because it's got to do with opportunities for development and growth. If we massively include women and bring them on board financially and digitally, that will boost development and growth for our countries and societies. So there too, there's also considerable progress. And another area in which we made progress has to do with the importance of acknowledging the importance of infrastructure. Without infrastructure, there can be no equity, no equality, no inclusion. So we're talking about physical and virtual infrastructure, access to quality communications, to the internet. And there we are seeking new mechanisms and better assets to channel infrastructure. And there, once again, reference was made to the need to advance in eliminating corruption, because when corruption gets in the way of infrastructure projects, you lose sight of your goals, the process is undermined, you waste time, and we are well aware of this because we've suffered this kind of problem firsthand. And there was also agreement on the need to continue growing in terms of food production, mindful of the fact that this must be done in a sustainable way. And there, Argentina has a major role to play, just as the South American region has a role as well. And we also talked about the sustainability of finance. All of this has to be done without the countries becoming overly indebted, without fiscal deficits that create imbalances, because that leads to a loss of all the progress made. And I think there was very healthy agreement on that. Also, that we need to work on healthcare as a way of fostering inclusion. On World AIDS Day, we remember those who lost their lives to AIDS, one of the most complex epidemics that the world faces, especially in the less privileged areas. And we are all committed to work towards inclusion based on improved access to healthcare. Those are some of the topics addressed.
Paula Avellaneda, on behalf of C5N, is asking the question. What details can you give us about the meetings that you held with the Saudi Arabian prince and with the Turkish president, Mr. Erdogan? Who requested the meetings? What issues were dealt with? And if the killing of the journalist from the Washington Post was discussed?
They asked for the meeting. That was the case with most bilaterals we had. The first one with the Crown Prince was a meeting during which he talked about all the investment opportunities his country sees in Argentina, especially with regard to energy, petrochemicals, and also food security issues. Of course, we have invited his country as well, just as we've invited everyone else, to invest in our country, which will create jobs for the Argentine people, which is my uppermost concern, always to try and see how we can come up with proposals and solutions for yet another Argentine. So I'm certain that Saudi Arabian authorities will be coming over the next few months to see how these investments advance. And with the Turkish president, we also discussed the same matter, the low level of trade exchanges we currently have, the low level of mutual investments, and both of them invited us to pay a state visit to their countries. And after organizing the G20, we may offer some ideas to Saudi Arabia, which will be hosting the G20 after Japan. And with the president of Turkey, we did talk about the murder of the journalist, and we both agreed that the relevant agencies and organizations need to demand that the truth be found, which is a commitment for Argentines as well.
Next, Jorgelina de Rosario is asking on behalf of Bloomberg. Good afternoon, Mr. President. I would like to ask you first something about the communique. It says that the world trade system is not achieving its objectives, and at the same time, that the world trade system is not achieving its objectives, and the word protectionism is not mentioned for the first time. Why is it not mentioned? And at the same time, do you know that that lack of agreement could accelerate even more the world trade war?
Well, everyone has high expectations regarding a meeting that will be taking place in a few hours, right? I think the point here is that the United States will not accept that, even though it's the most open economy in the world, of course, which means it won't accept that kind of label, let's say. I think the communique basically points out that we all bet on growing trade between and among our countries. What we're trying to do through restructuring of the WTO is to make sure that this is on equitable terms, to make sure that we achieve fair trade.
Next, on behalf of NA, Laura Javier will ask a question. Good afternoon. I would like to ask you, what was the tone of the dialogue that you had in your bilateral meeting with Mr. President Trump? If you thought that Argentina is between the tensions of the two countries.
Great question. I've heard over the last few days that locally in the press there were comments about the need for us to choose, and that is not the case. Argentina has shown, especially not just during the last 3 years, but over the past 2 days, that we can have excellent relations with all countries. And this is just what's happening right now. That's why I say Argentina has never been more connected to the world than now. And we can say now that we have excellent relations with the United States, which has always been the largest foreign investor in Argentina. And aside from our neighboring countries, it's the country that exports most tourists to Argentina. And we've also had excellent relations with China. In fact, tomorrow we have a state visit, and we'll be spending several hours with Xi Jinping, who's becoming more and more of a fan of Argentina, not just of its football and tango, but of its beef and wines. Yesterday evening, they were ecstatic about the food as well. So I must say that everyone performed outstandingly. I went into the kitchen to congratulate everyone because everyone was really very pleased also with the level of service they got. So that's the line we're pursuing. And regarding the comments on the meeting we had yesterday at 7 a.m. with Donald Trump, no, we didn't speak in those terms. Argentina doesn't see the presence of China as a threat. Rather, it sees it as an opportunity for development, for work, for the Argentine people, as I said. So opportunities for development for the Argentine people. And we try to reach agreements with all countries that are mutually beneficial. We're not going to enter into agreements that are detrimental to the Argentine people, nor are we going to enter into agreements that go against our partner country. We always try to have win-win agreements, and that's precisely what we're achieving. We've agreed on a whole lot of things over the past few hours and during the 17 bilaterals we had, and I'm sure we'll address that in some of the coming questions.
Bien Okada will ask a question from Mahash Singh. Good afternoon. I think there have been several difficulties regarding the various interests of the 20 countries. But what has been the most difficult thing to be able to reach this statement, this agreement? And in which way did you solve it? And additionally, do you have any advice for Japan for next year? Thank you.
I told Shinzo Abe at the end that I wasn't just giving him the floor, but basically shopping the responsibility off to him. I chucked it to him as if it was a rugby ball. It's been a huge responsibility for us, and we are happy to have got to the end of it after this truly unprecedented task for our region, our country. And this goes to show then that when we get down to work, we Argentines can do real high-quality stuff. We can get things right, and we need to take pride in that because it's a time at which we're changing history, and we think these things show that there's a future for us, and we undertake to work with this degree of professionalism, engaging in dialogue and with respect. And obviously, I don't need to offer recommendations to such a wise people as the Japanese people. We need to learn a lot from them. I always say they're more than welcome to work in Argentina because every time you've come here, we've learned from you. So I don't think you really need any advice from me or that Shinzo needs any advice to truly exercise the presidency of the G20 very well.
Next question, Emiliano Russo from Diario Popular. Mr. President, I would like to know why in the bilateral meeting with Theresa May you didn't mention, since it's a constitutional mandate, the Argentina's claim about the island's sovereignty, the Malvinas Island sovereignty. So in which way do you think these macro negotiations in the framework of the G20 and the success that you expressed, how they can impact our real economy in daily concerns such as inflation, which is going to be the highest one this year since 1991?
Yes, that was on the agenda. We all said that aside from the fact that each party ratifies its claims, the meeting would take place even in spite of the differences, and besides, the claim is enshrined in our constitution. But we are both really happy to have engaged in constructive dialogue. These are things that help us start resolving certain matters, such as connectivity for the islands. And we were also able to identify the remains of the war dead, which was something really moving and something that the families had been expecting for a very long time. And I think that is what counts. We are not talking about leaving anything aside, but rather about the fact that based on a relationship, things will be resolved. But we need to start walking on other paths and fields. We're working a lot with them on anti-corruption, for instance, which is a very important thing for our society. We need to finally get rid of the corruption that has damaged us so much. So we're working on many important fronts. And as to what concrete things, that's a good question. In these bilaterals, we have actually arranged financing on potable drinking water projects, wind power, gas, road infrastructure, logistics, and others for approximately $3 billion, which is quite a bit for us. Also improvements for our Belgrano freight railway, the Roca Electrical line, also railway line. We have agreed on customs facilitation matters and matters relating to the prevention of customs offenses. It's very important to put an end to corruption in import-export procedures. We've also worked and continue to work on modernization of government, e-government, and transparency. And we actually are signing deals with several governments, with the Turkish government, and we're always trying to improve the sanitary and phytosanitary processes in order to facilitate trade. We discussed this with Prime Minister Narendra Modi this morning from India, and he invited us to visit India. We'll probably be there in February. India is another great opportunity for cooperation with Argentina. We're also working on satellite matters. We have also entered into fisheries and agriculture agreements to work on research. E-commerce has also been present at our meetings with Macron, with Prime Minister Conte from Italy. We'll be having delegations of small and medium-sized enterprises to come and partner with our companies, and we think that's good because it paves the way to create jobs again, which is one of the key goals we have ahead of us. So you'll see we've made headway on a whole lot of matters, and we still have the meeting with Russia.
Accompany us in this building consensus. In which way does the world want to accompany us after this agreement signed, after this G20? So how is Argentina, our country, in the global framework? And also I would like to ask you if there was an agreement for Argentina to finally be a part of the OECD.
Well, there's something odd about the OECD. Everyone agrees to have Argentina in. We're top of that list. But the problem is they don't reach agreement with the ones that follow us on the list. We've been blocked for how long, Mr. Foreign Minister? 6 months? No one argues about Argentina, but the thing is about Romania, when, if there'll be another country, it could be Bulgaria, and, you know, that way months keep going by, and it's too bad because we continue working. We are meeting more and more OECD requirements. As they say that we can become members, but the whole process needs quite a lot of work that we are already doing. And what does it mean to accompany or to support? I would say, first, you've heard us, and this is not just now with this latest visit. Ever since we took office, each one of those who visited us here or the ones I've visited abroad, all of them, but absolutely all of them, say exactly the same thing, that Argentina has undertaken the right transformations, that there's no other way than this one. And they all recognize that this is not easy for us, that this is hard. And I say to them that I know that it's hard on many Argentines that are having to tighten the belts, and they're really making the best efforts, and this is the way to go. That's the truth. Unfortunately, after so many years of squandering, of not having been careful, of having betted on lies, on shortcuts, today it is up to us to build from where we are. The important thing is that each of the things we are building now strengthen our position. We are now working on a macroeconomic framework that becomes stronger and stronger. Obviously, there's still a lot that needs to be done. We need to lower taxes. We need a healthier public budget with more investments, with more infrastructure. But today we've made a lot of headway in the eyes of the world and in the last 3 years, ever since we took office. And we are working on a day-to-day basis, and obviously it's hard on us. So perhaps we find it hard to see the improvements. But outside, abroad, they say that they can see the difference. And this is why they've said it. They ratified this while here. Those presidents won't ever say anything unless they really believe in it. They don't need to come and tell us Argentines that we are doing nice things or good things for our future if they don't really think that way. They can just come, stay quiet, say hi, attend the meeting, and go home. And they have all unambiguously stated that we are doing a great job.
From Dirigentes from Spain, Carlos Trudera will ask a question. Good afternoon. First of all, congratulations for the organization of the event. It's been excellent. This summit, as you said, is held in a turbulent global scenario like the ones that took place 10 years ago when this group was formed. Similar but different at the same time. So what's the main specific action that you will undertake to translate into actions the consensus that you just signed and minimize the effects of that situation? And what's the perspective of Latin America that you analyzed, considering that we are about to start the beginning of 2 administrations of importance, like the one in Mexico and the one in Brazil, that are similarly or seem to be antagonic?
I would say that the conclusions in the communique are about continuing to advance towards balance. Argentina has suffered tremendously this year. We Argentines have suffered a lot due to the major imbalances we inherited. When you need to borrow in order to live, that is a major weakness. When you need for someone to sell energy to you in order to be able to live, that's a major weakness. And Argentina is addressing these matters. It's starting to balance its consumption and production. We're on the way to becoming a great exporter of energy, which will provide a very solid foundation for us. And Argentina is working hard because there are sectors that resist in politics and in our society. They resist the idea of a healthy budget. But we've made a lot of headway with Minister Duhovne defending all Argentines and battling every day in order to achieve the balance. And I think that's just the right way to go. And the other very clear thing is that after being an isolated country in one of the most protectionistic blocs in the world, both ourselves and Brazil, as President Temer said, want to open up. We understand that we made mistakes, and we see that the countries that have opened up in the last 20 years are the ones that have grown the most, much more than Argentina and Brazil. So now, alongside Paraguay and Uruguay, we hope to open up and to start signing agreements like the one between the EU, EFTA, with Canada, Japan, Singapore. We are engaging in conversations with several partners, and we hope that will speed up over the next few months.
And now the last question.
Finally, I'm really shattered, very, very tired now.
Cristian Balbo, on behalf of America TV. Good morning, Mr. President.
Another good morning. I mean, is my watch wrong or what? I think we're all sort of a bit giddy.
First, I would like to congratulate you. I share your emotion, your feelings that were shown at the the Cologne Opera House. And you just made a statement regarding the predatory attitude of China that was mentioned yesterday, that was dealt with in the bilateral meeting that you held with the North American or the US president. So it seems that we all have a PhD in international politics, but it's well known that there are suspicion of corruption of the Asian giant in Latin America. For example, I think that Panama was tempted by China. So I would like to know where we stand, because it's evident that the conflict between the USA and China is real in commercial terms, in trade terms, and this was addressed in last year's summit in Hamburg. So what capacity does the G20 have to solve international conflicts? And do you share Donald Trump's concerns regarding corruption, suspicion about the Asian giant in Latin America? I was asking about the suspicion of corruption of the Asian giant in Latin America, because it's evident that there is a trade conflict between the USA and China. And yesterday, there was some information about a conversation where somebody mentioned that this giant was devouring Latin America. China was... so what was the real thing that happened?
I'd say these tensions that have surfaced in the last few months between the United States and China are part of the changes that have taken place in markets, which have shifted from a great readiness to finance emerging markets to a very restrictive attitude. And that, in addition to the drought we had, has compounded the difficulties for us Argentines. But as regards what China is doing in Argentina, what matters most is what we do with any of our visitors. And that is the great change in Argentina now. Anyone, whether they be China, Japan, France, we are buying things from them or selling things to them. The thing is that we do that with open, clean hands, everything on the table, nothing fishy. So we should have no fear. It's really up to us to ensure that things are as transparent as they should be for the benefit of the Argentine people. We are the ones truly committed to transparency, and that's why we have improved in record time in terms of climbing up positions in terms of transparency and, well, procurement, public procurement, open government. You know, we've improved a lot in those areas, and we have also got this law that also looks at milder sentences for those who give information leading to criminal investigations and successful criminal investigations. So we know how to manage things. Obviously, we can't change everything overnight, but if we get things right, this will obviously bring growth, no doubt about that. And we need to rest assured, we need to be proud and be confident that if we do things right, it will bear fruit. It's what happened last night at the Opera House. We were all proud of what we were doing. And I was really moved to see the pride of the performers who started shouting, "Argentina, Argentina." And I was already rather emotional because I could see Angela and Shinzo. There was plenty of light there. And I could see all of the colleagues, presidents around me that were truly marveled to see what we were showing. We were showing images and views of our wonderful country and also showing the diversity of our country, the cultural diversity. And they all said, it's unbelievable that you have all these different kinds of dances and music. And yes, that's all ours. And that's what I think moved everyone, just as we were mobilized by the Youth Olympic Games, which also impressed the world. I think these days we have also been a surprise. And that's just what we need to reinforce, that what we're doing is the right thing, that this is what leads to the future. And this is where people will want to work side by side with us. And we should have no doubt, even though it may be difficult, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Everything will require that we do our little bit. That's the way. So thank you all very much, and we'll meet again after the meeting with Shinzo Abe in a while, and then after Putin and, and Angela Merkel, by the way. In spite of the problems she had with the plane, she had this emergency landing, and still she flew on a commercial airline, and at least she has attended the last part of the G20, which I think is a token of Angela Merkel's affection for the Argentine people. Thank you very much.
In this way, we conclude the press conference in the G20 summit. So thank you and good afternoon to all of you.